So the RAIN practice is a four-step practice, and it's a way of working mindfully with experience. And the four steps are recognizing, allowing, so R for recognizing, A for allowing, I for investigating with kindness, and N for non-identification or resting in natural awareness. So in previous sessions, we've explored recognizing and allowing. And in this session, I'm going to focus a little more on the investigative quality of the RAIN practice and the investigative quality of mindfulness. So you might have noticed that I said investigate with kindness, and this is because investigation could kind of give off a bit of a vibe of, sort of Spanish Inquisition type interrogation, and that's not it. We can very easily sort of subvert our mindfulness practice by bringing in harshness, when we kind of question ourselves as if we were, subjecting ourselves to some, criminal investigation or something. It's an invitation to look at experience more closely. So this investigation is with a light touch, with love, if you like. And it is an extension of recognizing. So you might remember that when we looked at recognizing, the intention was to really see what's going on. When we start meditating, people see all sorts of different aspects of their lives that they might not have noticed before, certainly aspects of their minds. I know when I started meditating, I never realized I could have that many thoughts in like 1 minute. And how for the first time I wasn't completely caught up in those thoughts, which is really what made me continue, because I began to see the space between kind of awareness and thoughts. And that was very inspiring because I had been very caught up in my thoughts and they weren't really helping me very much. So when we recognize, we see things as they are, from the perspective of awareness. So just by noticing, recognizing and saying, this is what this is, a thought, an emotion, a body sensation, we develop a sense of skillful being with that experience. So investigation is perhaps, you could imagine that we're kind of shining a slightly closer light on aspects of what's going on. So we could choose to investigate a particular part of our experience. So, in the practice we just did, we brought attention to an anchor place. So noticing how we can move our attention to a particular place, perhaps in our body, and say, what's going on in my tummy? Hunger's here. And the breath is here, moving. And the texture of my clothing is here, and it's moving too, along with the breath. So I can bring attention to a particular place and investigate more closely. So that's one way of kind of bringing the spotlight in. So we might want to see more deeply into a particular region of our experience and investigate it by coming up close, bringing the spotlight of attention inwards. And another way we can explore investigation is actually by asking some questions. We could ask ourselves, what is drawing my attention just now? What is it that's pulling, kind of pulling my mind in? How am I experiencing this moment in my body? Or what's happening in my environment? And we could continue to ask questions like, how is it changing from moment to moment? Is the hunger I experienced a moment ago the same hunger that's here now? Has it maybe become more as time has gone on and I've not eaten? Or maybe it seems to stay similar. So we can kind of investigate the changes as they happen. And over time, we might start to notice patterns, which can be very helpful because we can see the ways perhaps that we habitually meet experience, or we may spot patterns in the nature of our conscious living. Kind of patterns such as the tendency to move towards things we like and try to push away things we don't like. Patterns that sometimes called grasping and aversion, or just not noticing, kind of spacing out. We may have our own particular versions of these patterns in relationship to certain experiences or objects or people. And if we can investigate them, really looking at how they appear in our body, how they appear in our mind as thoughts. So another question we can ask ourselves is, what is my belief here? What is my habitual thought about this experience? And is that perhaps serving me or not? Is it true indeed or not? By asking ourselves these questions, not as a sort of intellectual exercise, but as a way into the experience itself. So as a way into really getting to know what's happening in the unfolding moments of our lives. And so we might be able to sort of piece together patterns over time that show us our default way of living. And then if we can see it from that point of view of having investigated it, then there's the possibility of change. So the investigation creates some kind of discernment. And we may notice some common themes over time, maybe by talking with others and investigating with others. So we might notice that the truth of impermanence, how events are continually in flux, our experience inside is continually in flux. We might notice how our own what we call ourselves are made up of these kind of impermanent shifting sounds. And with that, we maybe can, if we realize that we're a bundle of thoughts, emotions, body sensations, and impulses, then maybe we don't need to take our so-called selves quite so seriously. My problem, the trials of my life, and we recognize also, how this is part of being human, that other people are similar in this being a flux of experiences. We might notice, what we can and what we can't control in terms of our inner and external life. So, we can start to see the habits, our own habits of the world, the habits of this being human, and see that there's flexibility within that, because if things are changing, then nothing stays the same. Those habits can shift. And also where perhaps it's wise to put our energy into changing what, or not changing some of the what. And, can we even investigate the investigator? So recognizing that there's this quality of mind that can see what's going on, that can actually ask, who's asking the questions, we might say. Who is it that's actually asking these questions? And if there's a me that's asking the questions, then that me that has the experience isn't quite so solid as perhaps I might think it is. So the discernment of investigating can lead to a new relationship with the moment, where we can actually see the truth of all the different parts of us and the world more clearly, by asking again and again and noticing again and again. So this investigation isn't like a one-shot deal, it happens over time. Finally, if we can see what's going on and we can be meeting it wisely, we also can, the question can arise, what does this moment need from me? How, as we investigate, can we ask our wise mind within, or kind of our deepest being, if you like, what would be skillful? Maybe it just needs more watching, more investigation. Maybe some action would be skillful. Maybe kindness is needed, or patience, or appreciation, or love, or some other quality. So the more we get to know what's happening, the more we're willing to look and to ask, And by the way, doesn't mean we necessarily get all the answers. So we got the practices in asking the questions without expectation of any preconceived answer. Otherwise, we're not really asking a question; we're just making a statement. So if we ask with a sense of not knowing what's going to come up, and then having pieced together what comes up, we've got more opportunity to act skillfully. So I would argue that investigating what's happening gives us more power to see, relate well, and if necessary, act, or sometimes refrain from acting. A bit like perhaps sort of, how you can play with the power of a microscope. So we've got recognizing, which is kind of like, you look in the microscope and you see, to a certain degree, and then you turn the power up, and maybe actually, at sort of more subatomic level, you see something quite different, by just kind of training the power of the microscope higher. So this also requires, therefore, training our skills of investigating. And over time, with meditation practice, we can become perhaps more adept and more, have more power perhaps in our attention. We can see more deeply, more subtly.